You've been through the fire, haven't you? You faced storms that tried to drown you, valleys that seemed endless, and battles that left you scarred. But here you are, standing, breathing, fighting. You are unbroken. Let me tell you something. The enemy thought he had you. He thought he could break you, defeat you, silence you. But what he didn't know is that every trial you faced only forged you stronger. Every tear you shed watered the seeds of resilience within you. See, the world might label you as damaged, as a survivor of hardship, but God calls you more than a survivor. He calls you a warrior, a conqueror, a testament to his faithfulness. Your scars aren't signs of defeat. They're badges of honor, proof that you endured, that you overcame, that you are unbroken. There were moments when you wanted to give up, when the weight of the world pressed down on you, when the pain seemed unbearable, but you held on, you kept going. You trusted that God had a purpose for your pain, a reason for your struggle. And now, looking back, you see that every step, every setback, every heartbreak was part of his plan to shape you into the person you are today. You're unbroken not because you never fell, but because you always got back up. You are unbroken not because you never stumbled, but because you kept moving forward. You are unbroken because God's strength is made perfect in your weakness, and his grace has been sufficient for you. So stand tall, hold your head high, walk with confidence, knowing that you are unbroken. The enemy tried to destroy you, but he only made you stronger. The storms tried to wash you away, but you became the flood that swept them under. The world tried to silence you, but your voice is louder than ever. You are unbroken. You are unstoppable. You are a living testimony of God's power to heal, restore, and make whole. And as long as you keep trusting, keep believing, keep moving forward, there's nothing that can break you. Remember, being unbroken doesn't mean you're perfect. It means you're resilient. It means you've been through the fire and come out refined. It means you've faced the giants and stood tall. It means you've been knocked down, but never knocked out. So rise up today, embrace your unbrokenness. Let it be a beacon of hope to those around you. Show them that no matter what life throws your way, you can stand firm, you can endure, and you can overcome. You are unbroken, and that's your greatest strength. I hope this captures the essence of what you're looking for. If you'd like a longer version or more specific content, feel free to let me know. You know, people often think strength is about having everything together, like strength means you never cry, never fall, never break. But that's not strength. That's pride dressed up as perfection. Real strength, it's raw, it's honest. It shows up when you've got nothing left but a mustard seed of faith, and you still decide to move forward. You want to know what resilience looks like? It looks like you getting out of bed on a day you had every reason to stay under the cover. It looks like you choosing hope when despair is whispering in your ear. It looks like you walking through fire and coming out not untouched, but unconsumed. See, resilience isn't the absence of pain. It's the presence of purpose in the middle of it. You didn't make it this far because everything went right. You made it because something inside of you refused to give up, even when everything around you was falling apart. You were made to be resilient. You were made in the image of a God who does his best work in broken places. When life tried to knock you out, something in your spirit said, not today. And even if you limped through that season, even if you cried yourself to sleep and barely made it through, you still made it through. That's what resilience is. It's not that the storm didn't come. It's that the storm came and didn't destroy you. It's not that you didn't break down. It's that you refused to stay down. Sometimes the most powerful declaration of faith is just showing up. Showing up when you feel forgotten. Showing up when you're exhausted. Showing up when you're not even sure if God is still listening. That's when resilience is being forged. Not on the mountaintop, but in the valley. Not when everything's working out, but when everything's working against you and you still choose to stand. And maybe the most dangerous thing about you is that your talent or your intellect or your resume, it's your refusal to quit. You don't even realize how much of a threat you are to the enemy simply because you're still breathing, you're still worshiping, you're still believing. That kind of resilience can't be bought. It can't be taught in a class. It can't be handed down through bloodlines. That kind of resilience is cultivated through the crushing, through the lonely nights, through the seasons where it felt like God was silent, but somehow, some way, the part of you he put there, the part that doesn't quit, the part that still hopes, the part that says, I don't understand it, but I'm trusting anyway. That's resilience. And that's why your story isn't over. In fact, it's just getting started. You didn't go through all that just to survive. You went through it so you could thrive. Amen. So you could stand on the ashes of what the enemy tried to burn down and say, this is what resilience looks like. This is what grace looks like. I wonder how many times you almost gave up but didn't. I wonder how many times God caught you right before you fell too far. I wonder how many nights heaven was fighting for you when you didn't even have the strength to fight for yourself. And now you're looking at yourself, wondering why you feel tired. Of course you're tired. You've been at war, but look at you. You didn't just survive it. You grew through it. And growth doesn't come without pressure. Growth doesn't come without stretching. Growth doesn't come without pain. The pain didn't disqualify you. It revealed you. It showed you who you really are. It showed you that you can lose people, lose plans, lose direction, and still not lose your purpose. It showed you that you can walk through things that should have taken you out and still have the strength to encourage someone else. It showed you that you've got a deep well of strength you didn't even know was there until life tried to drain it dry. Resilience doesn't mean you didn't cry. It means you cried and kept going. It means you felt the fear and did it anyway. It means you heard the doubt and refused to let it define you. And maybe the most beautiful thing about your resilience is that you never had to manufacture it. You didn't have to pretend, because real resilience doesn't need a performance. It needs a posture that says, I'm still here. I'm still open. I still believe God can use this. God uses broken people with unbroken spirits. People who've been through the fire and still carry the flame. People who've been pushed down and still rose up. People who've been counted out and still showed up. You are one of those people. You are proof that resilience is real, that faith is stronger than fear, that grace is greater than grief, that hope is louder than heartbreak. And I need you to understand, this resilience isn't just for you. It's for the people watching you, the ones who are wondering if they can make it through what they're facing, the ones who don't have the words to pray, but they're watching your life as a sermon. Your resilience is preaching louder than any microphone ever could. Your ability to stand when everything around you says you should fall, that's power, that's influence, that's legacy. You didn't come this far to question your worth. You didn't make it through all that to go back to who you used to be. God's not finished with you. And that resilience he put in you, it's going to carry you through the next thing too. You're not just a survivor. You are a fighter. You are a finisher. You are a child of God with a backbone built by battle and a spirit forged in faith. That's why you're still standing. That's why you're still here. That's why you're unbroken. There's something powerful about a scar. Something sacred, because a scar tells a story. It's a sign you were wounded, yes, but it's also a sign you healed, a sign that whatever tried to break you didn't succeed. That moment that almost took you out didn't get the final say. And if you're willing to stop hiding your scars, you'll realize that the very things God will use to speak hope into someone else's life. We live in a world obsessed with hiding weakness, covering pain, filtering our flaws. But God doesn't work in filters. He works in truth. He works in the raw. He works in the real. And there is nothing more real than a scar. The scars are not signs of shame, they're signs of survival. They're marks of mercy. They're evidence that grace carried you through something that should have crushed you. You didn't come through unmarked, but you came through undefeated. That's the thing about scars. They don't lie. They don't pretend everything was easy or painless. They say, I was hit here, I bled here, I wept here, but look, I didn't die here. The enemy hoped you'd bury the memory of that pain in silence. But what he doesn't realize is that silence is his favorite weapon, because if you're too ashamed to show the scar, you'll miss the chance to show God's power through it. You keep waiting to be fully healed before you tell your story. But healing isn't always neat and tidy. Sometimes healing is messy. Sometimes it's day by day. Sometimes it means limping into the next season, but still moving forward. Your scar may still be tender, but it's no longer open. It's no longer bleeding. And if the wound is closed, the story can be open. Somebody needs to know you made it through what they're just stepping into. Somebody needs to hear your story, not your silence. Because there's power in saying, I've been there too, and look, I'm still standing. Think about Jesus. Even after the resurrection, he still had scars. He didn't erase them. He showed them. Why? Because the scar proved the suffering, but it also proved the victory. When Thomas doubted, Jesus didn't shame him. He just said, touch the wounds, see the scars. He invited Thomas into the evidence of what he'd overcome. And if Jesus didn't hide his scars, why do you feel like you need to hide yours? The scars are your testimony. They're not just signs of what you went through. They're signs of who brought you through. There's a difference between being wounded and being scarred. A wound is open. It's sensitive, vulnerable, still in the process. But a scar has been through the healing. A scar says, I felt it, I faced it, I overcame it. And not only did I overcome it, but now I'm marked by the grace that got me through it. That's why you don't have to be ashamed of what you've been through. God didn't bring you out so you could pretend it never happened. He brought you out so you could carry that story with you into every space you walk into. He brought you out so your life could be proof to somebody else that it's possible to come back from what they thought would kill them. You didn't survive that heartbreak just to move on. You didn't survive that diagnosis just to forget it. You didn't walk through that season of depression, that failure, that betrayal, just to pretend it never existed. No, God allowed you to walk through it so he could use it, so you could stand in front of somebody else and say, I've been through it. I was broken. I was bleeding. But look what God did. Look at this scar. It doesn't hurt anymore, but I'll never forget what it taught me. That's your power. That's your testimony. That's your weapon. And don't you let the world convince you that you have to look flawless to be faithful, that you have to be polished to be powerful. God is looking for people who will stand up, scars and all, and say, here I am, Lord. Use even this. Because when God heals you, he doesn't just put the pieces back together. He makes something stronger than before. A scar is tougher than the skin that was there originally. And you're tougher now too. You didn't just come out, you leveled up. You didn't just survive, you became dangerous to darkness. Because when you carry the evidence of what you've survived, you remind the enemy he lost. And yes, maybe you still carry some pain in your memory, but even that pain is a platform for God's power. Maybe you still feel the sting when you talk about it, but that sting is proof you care. It's proof that something holy happened there, that God met you in that place, that he walked with you through the fire, that he spoke life over you in the middle of the ashes, that he gave you peace when you should have lost your mind, that he picked you up when nobody else could reach you. You keep wondering why you had to go through what you went through, and maybe the answer is right there in your scar, because now you've got a story. Now you've got authority. Now you've got something that pain gave you that comfort never could. Empathy, wisdom, compassion, depth. You've got a voice now that hits different because it's not theory, it's testimony. It's not hearsay, it's experience. People can argue theology, but they can't argue with your scars. They can't argue with your survival. You might feel like what you've been through disqualified you. But what if it's the very thing that qualified you to speak life to someone else? What if your scar is the signature of God's work in your life? What if your healing is the message someone else has been waiting for? Don't underestimate how powerful it is to be vulnerable. Don't dismiss what God has done in your life just because it didn't come wrapped in a bow. Sometimes the most anointed thing you can do is simply say, I'm still here. I've got the scars to prove it. You've been thinking your scars make you weak, but I came to tell you, they make you a warrior. They make you relatable. They make you real. And this world doesn't need more perfect people. It needs more honest ones. It needs people who say, I've been there. I know what that pain feels like. I know what that fear sounds like. I know what that darkness looks like. But I also know what hope feels like. I know what peace looks like. I know what healing sounds like. Don't skip over the hard parts, because the glory doesn't shine as bright without the grit. The healing doesn't hit as deep without the hurt. Your scars carry power. Your scars carry purpose. Your scars carry the proof that God still works miracles, not just in the Bible, but in real lives like yours. There's this lie that keeps circling around, this pressure to be perfect, to walk through life without a lint, to always smile like nothing ever touched you, to present yourself as whole and flawless, because anything less than that might mean you're not strong enough, not spiritual enough, not faithful enough. But that lie, it doesn't come from God. That lie comes from a world that's more impressed with appearances than authenticity, from a culture that values the image of strength over the truth of grace. But I want to tell you something that might just shift your whole mindset. Unbroken does not mean perfect. It means empowered. You've got to stop equating flawlessness with strength. Stop thinking that the cracks in your armor disqualify you, because the truth is, God does his best work through the cracks, through the weaknesses, through the moments when you feel like you have nothing left to give, and somehow you're still standing. That's not you being fake. That's not you pretending. That's the power of God showing up in places you thought were too broken to be useful. When the Bible says his strength is made perfect in our weakness, it means exactly that. Not his strength is made perfect in our perfection, not in our performances, not in our ability to control every situation. No, it says in our weakness, in the moment when we're honest enough to say, God, I can't do this without you. That's where the power comes. That's where the anointing flows. And that's where you realize that being unbroken isn't about never being hurt. It's about never being held hostage by what hurt you. You are empowered, not because you've avoided the fight, but because you've survived it. You're empowered because you learned how to worship with tears in your eyes. You learned how to trust when everything around you was crumbling. You learned how to walk forward, even when fear was shouting at you from every side. That's not weakness. That's holy courage. That's what it means to be unbroken. To have gone through something and come out knowing who you are, but more importantly, knowing who God is in you. And it's okay if you're still figuring it out. It's okay if you're walking through it and you're not sure how the story ends. It's okay if some days you're confident and other days you're confused. That doesn't make you weak. That doesn't mean that you don't have faith. It means you're human. And being human doesn't disqualify you from being used by God. In fact, it qualifies you even more, because God isn't looking for plastic perfection. He's looking for surrendered imperfection. He's looking for people who will say, God, if you can use anything, you can use me, mess and all. And I know there are voices in your head telling you that if people really knew what you've struggled with, they'd walk away. That if people really knew the battles in your mind, the war in your heart, they'd see you differently. But that's not the voice of your creator. That's the voice of your accuser. And his only power is to keep you living behind a mask. Because if he can keep you pretending, he can keep you from experiencing the power of being fully known and still fully loved. Empowerment doesn't come from hiding, it comes from honesty. It comes from the moment you stop trying to hold it all together and start letting God hold you. It comes from the moment you stop trying to fix it all on your own and start allowing grace to fill in the gaps. Because that's what grace does. It fills the space between who you think you need to be and who God already knows you are. Grace doesn't just cover your mistakes, it empowers your mission. It gives you the boldness to move forward when everything in your past says you should stay stuck. Being unbroken doesn't mean you never feel pain. It means the pain doesn't get the last word. It means that grief may knock on your door, but joy still gets to sit at your table. It means that fear may whisper lies, but faith gets to speak truth louder. It means that every time life tried to pull you under, you chose to reach for something higher. You chose to believe that what's ahead of you is greater than what's behind you. You chose to believe that God is still writing your story and that broken crayons still color beautiful pictures. You are empowered to walk into every room, not because you've mastered every emotion or solved every problem, but because you carry something within you that cannot be shaken. The same spirit that raised Christ from the dead lives in you. That means you're not walking in your own power, you're walking in resurrection power. And resurrection power doesn't require perfection, it requires surrender. And every day you choose to keep going. Every time you choose to show up, even when you feel like you're not enough. Every moment you refuse to let shame have the microphone. You are walking in empowerment. Not the kind the world gives. Not the kind that comes from accolades or applause, but the kind that is rooted in identity, anchored in grace, and fueled by faith. You've got to start seeing yourself the way God sees you. He doesn't see a mess. He sees a masterpiece in progress. He doesn't see a project. He sees a purpose. He sees the battles you fought, the tears you've cried, the prayers you've whispered in the dark. And he's not waiting for you to become perfect before he empowers you. He's empowering you in the middle of it, right in the chaos, right in the confusion, right in the questions, because that's where his glory shines brightest, in the middle of your honest yes. In the moment you decide, I may not have it all together, but I'm still going to show up. Unbroken doesn't mean flawless. It means faithful. It means you keep moving forward even with the limp. It means you trust God with the parts of you that still feel undone. It means you let grace carry you where strength alone never could. And that right there is the kind of empowerment that changes everything. Sometimes we forget that our lives aren't just about us. We get so caught up in what we're going through, what we're trying to overcome, what we're still waiting on, that we miss the fact that somebody else is watching us. Somebody else is looking at the way we walk through pain, the way we respond to pressure, the way we keep standing even when everything in our world is shaking. And what you don't realize is that your life, your story, your journey, your survival, it's not just your own, someone else's roadmap. Your resilience is someone else's inspiration. Your unbrokenness is someone else's breakthrough. You think the struggle disqualified you, but it actually qualified you to reach people in ways no sermon ever could. You may not have a pulpit, but you've got a platform. It's your life. It's the way you walk into a room and carry peace where there should be panic. It's the way you speak hope in places other people only know despair. It's the way you show up with grace after betrayal, with love after loss, with faith. And people notice that. They may not say anything, but they see it, they feel it, they start to believe, if they made it through that, maybe I can make it too. Your life is a testimony, not because it's perfect, but because it's real. Because people can look at you and see that you've been through something and somehow you didn't lose your life. That's powerful. That's influence. That's ministry. Ministry isn't just microphones and messages. Sometimes it's walking through fire and not smelling like smoke. Sometimes it's sitting in silence with someone else's pain because you remember what it felt like to sit in yours. Sometimes it's just saying, me too, when someone else feels alone. You didn't survive what you survived to keep it a secret. That pain you endured, that healing you experienced, that comeback you lived through, it's not just for you. It's for the person who thinks their story is over. It's for the one who thinks the addiction can't be broken, the marriage can't be saved, the depression can't lift. When you share your story, when you live unbroken in front of them, you're not just giving them inspiration, you're giving them permission to hope again, to believe again, to try again. Somebody needs to know you weren't always this strong, that there was a time you were barely holding on, that you cried yourself to sleep, that you questioned everything, that you didn't see the way out. And yet, God made a way. And that way is still available. That power is still accessible. That grace is still flowing. And your life is proof of that. You're not the source. but you're the evidence, and evidence speaks. You don't need a stage to be significant. You don't need a title to have impact. Some of the greatest sermons ever preached never had a single word. They were preached through quiet perseverance, through consistent faithfulness, through lives that kept loving, kept believing, kept showing up even when it didn't make sense. Your unbrokenness, your ability to keep going, to keep trusting, to keep worshiping, even with unanswered prayers, is a living, breathing declaration that God is faithful. Think about what you've walked through, the moments that tried to break you, the chapters that looked like dead ends, the prayers that went unanswered, and the ones that were answered in ways you didn't expect. Every single one of those things has shaped your story. And stories speak. Stories matter. Stories carry power, not just to heal you, but to heal others. When you tell the truth about your journey, you create space for someone else